Okay, so here's my cinematic I made to showcase my level. I tried to use as many panning shots as I could so that I can show off the rooms in a fluid manner. Alright, so onto the level. So this is what the player is greeted with when they first start the level. I've tried to make the leading lines here as obvious as possible so that the player is directed towards this doorway. I also put the bright light up at the top so that the player definitely knows that this is the correct way to go. So in this room here, I've only have 3 puzzle elements so I can slowly introduce the player to how the game works. So we have obviously the cube over here, which I've chosen to highlight in purple, the start node, and then the door that's activated by the start node. So simply to complete this room, put the cube on the node and it opens the door. Very simple. Now through the door, directly opposite, I've put a cube wall, which is in blue, which is another non-grey colour, which is to slowly introduce these mechanics to the player. So if they walk over to it, obviously the player themselves can go through it and they'll be like, oh okay, this is fine. And then they're greeted with this small room which has a very similar setup of having a start node and a door in it. But since there's nothing else that they can do in this room, they have no choice but to exit. Since there's a wall here, they're going to look to the right, which means that they'll see the door over here. And if they go in here, they'll see the purple light and that there's another cube. So their first instinct may be to pick up the cube and try and take it back to the room where they found the start node. But since there's a cube wall here, they can't do that, which teaches the player that the cubes cannot go through this wall. So with no other choice, the player then takes the cube through to this room, in which they'll find a similar setup. And then when they place that on the thing, you hear the noise of the door, but this door doesn't open, so it has to be the one over here, which reveals another room with a cube. And again, since there's a cube wall here, the only place that they can put this is there. Which means that they can now go through to here, and there's a checkpoint waiting for them. Now this corridor here, I wanted to make just a long creepy corridor with a flickering light at the end, so I mean that's what I did. But that's it. Now here in this room, I thought it was important to highlight the objective to the player as early as possible for each level so that they don't feel lost. So I've put the exit of this room with a massive light above it right as the player enters, so that it's very obvious where it is they're trying to get to. As for the puzzle, you can see that there's a bridge here, which is obviously how you're going to get across, and a couple start nodes along with a cube over here. Now the cube is probably what's going to entice the player. So as they come over here, they can see all of the moving platforms and a bunch of start nodes. So if we drop down, we can kind of have a look at the mechanism I've designed here. The idea being that the cube is trapped behind this glass. You can't go past here. And you need to move it using the moving platforms so that it then fires out of this hole in the glass. So to make it slightly more intuitive for the player, I have lined up the start nodes with the moving platforms that they activate, just to make it so that they don't get confused. So if we put it on this one first, the cube is going to fall down there. Then we put it on there and it will go across. Now since the moving platforms move through each other, we get this happening. And then finally the cube is fired out and was going to land up there. Not quite, but it's all the same. So now we can just jump and put the cubes up here. Bear in mind that we can't put it through the cube wall, but we as a player can travel through that. And then then we jump on these boxes over here just to get back up. And then once both cubes are placed on here, it's just using an AND gate. The bridge is activated and we can move across to the next room. So I've got another long corridor here, which is a little bit bare, but what it could be useful for is a loading zone. So we can now unload other parts of the level and load the next one. So again, this room here, I've tried to make it very obvious to the player where exactly it is that they're going. So the big exit here with the light again above it, that's a bit of a theme I decided on, was to have a light, one of these small lights above the exit door. And in this room here, we have the checkpoint, which I guess makes the player feel a bit safer, since they know they have somewhere close that they can respawn, which also may foreshadow what's to come. If you can see by this bright light here, there is actually a lava pit in this room, along with a cube, again highlighted in purple, and 2 start nodes. And if we look down in this hole, there is in fact a jump pad. Now what could that be for? If we look at the start node that's facing towards there and we put the cube on, it spawns another cube. If we take that and put it on the only other remaining node, we see that some moving platforms have started to move across the lava. So we can take the cube from this node, and just wait for the platforms. Excuse that. As you can see, the player respawns back here. And also the cube is going to respawn if it falls in the lava. All you need to do is jump across when the platforms stop, and then jump off before it goes into the wall. We take the cube across here, and we put it on this start node here, which opens the door and lets the player through, but also this start node is linked up using an OR gate to the moving platforms here, meaning that we can take the cube off of here and the platforms will still move. Additionally, as you come out of this door here, there's a start node, which is there just to remind the player, well, it's placed there specifically to remind the player that they need another cube to progress even. So we take the cube through here, back up through the door, and onto this start node. We hear that a door has opened, and in fact the door here has opened and we can go to the exit. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble on about my level.